I had always imagined this day differently. My son, David, had been married for 6 months to Sophia, a warm, intelligent, and polite young woman. He had spoken of her family often, describing them as wealthy, refined, and a little intimidating, as he said jokingly. But today, I would meet them. I live a modest life, a quiet house on a tree-lined street, simple clothes, and years of wisdom etched softly in the lines on my face. I had never felt the need to impress anyone with wealth or status. My life had always been about honesty, love, and raising my children well. Yet, as I adjusted my plain scarf and smoothed my simple dress, I decided to play a role, one I never thought I would. Be naive, humble, a little poor in appearance, I whispered to myself. Let them underestimate me. I didn't want to intimidate anyone. I wanted them to see the real me without judgment, and perhaps, in the process, reveal their true intentions. Meeting the family. The house was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers reflected light like tiny stars, and the walls were lined with expensive paintings. Sophia greeted me warmly. Her mother, Margaret, was tall, elegant, and had a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Her father, Henry, had a quiet, imposing presence, his hands resting neatly on the arms of his chair. There were younger siblings, cousins, and friends bustling around, all perfectly groomed, polite, but stiff, like statues made to impress. I entered slowly, carrying my simple handbag. My dress was modest. My hands, bare except for a small silver ring, rested gently on my lap when I sat down. I could sense the subtle glances, the quick evaluations. I had expected that. The conversation. "Mother," Sophia said softly, "please have some tea. We just made it fresh." I smiled and shook my head. "Thank you, dear, but I never drink fancy teas. Just plain black tea is fine for me." Margaret's smile faltered for a moment. She tilted her head, curiosity flickering in her eyes. "So you're a homemaker?" she asked lightly. "Yes," I said. "I've spent my life raising my children. They've grown up to be kind, responsible people. That's all I ever wanted." There was a brief pause. Henry's gaze lingered on me. He seemed to be measuring, weighing, and testing me without words. The test begins. The family began asking subtle questions. Do you have investments? Where did you grow up? Do you travel much? I answered modestly. No, I haven't traveled far. Life kept me busy at home. I never had much money, but I've always had enough for what mattered. Investments? Just in my children and their education. A few of them exchanged faint glances, and I caught the hint of surprise in their eyes. I kept my tone soft, my eyes bright, and my posture calm. I wanted them to underestimate me, not out of cruelty, but curiosity. The dinner. Dinner was served. Silverware gleamed. The food was exquisite, far more than what I was used to at home. I complimented the chef lightly. The vegetables are so fresh, and the broth tastes like it was made with care. You must have a wonderful gardener. Margaret blinked for a moment. Yes, we do have a gardener. I smiled again. You can taste the difference, can't you? It's always the simple things that matter most. David smiled at me across the table. Sophia's hand gently brushed his arm. I noticed the way the room changed, subtly. The polite stiffness began to waver. Questions were softer. Curiosity mixed with respect now. A quiet revelation. As the evening drew on, I realized something. I hadn't come to prove my wealth or my social standing. I hadn't tried to impress them with clothes or jewels. I had come to observe and reveal. And slowly, as the evening wore on, I began to see their true nature. Some were genuinely kind, some were polite but calculating, and some, they were impressed by what they didn't see coming. I had acted poor, naive, humble, and it turned out that in doing so, I held a quiet power, a power of truth, grace, and self-respect that money and status could never buy.
The evening continued quietly after dinner, but the air in the room had shifted. I sat in my chair, sipping plain black tea from a delicate china cup, letting the warmth settle into my hands. The conversation around me was lively, but measured. People were talking, laughing lightly, yet I could sense the subtle evaluations continuing. I had anticipated their questions, their polite curiosity, and even their judgment. But what I didn't expect was how easy it would be to turn their assumptions upside down, without raising my voice, without arguing, just by staying true to myself. A daughter-in-law's curiosity. Sophia leaned closer, her eyes bright with interest. "Mom," she said quietly, "you seem different from what I expected. I thought my parents would feel uncomfortable with someone so simple." I smiled softly. Why should they? Simplicity has a way of revealing what truly matters. Her gaze lingered on me. I could see admiration flicker behind her warm eyes, admiration for composure, wisdom, and quiet confidence. "Yes," I said gently, "sometimes the most naive appearance hides more experience than anyone could imagine." Sophia laughed quietly. "I think you're testing them." "Perhaps," I admitted, "or perhaps I'm letting them test themselves." The mother-in-law's challenge. Margaret, Sophia's mother, finally spoke with a slightly sharper tone. "So you never traveled much? Never invested in anything fancy? Never wore expensive clothes?" "I've worn only what I needed and invested in what mattered most, my children, their education, and teaching them values that last a lifetime." Her brow furrowed slightly. I could see her curiosity mingled with unease. She had assumed I was naive, perhaps even incapable of contributing meaningful conversation. But my calm, deliberate answers shifted the dynamic in the room. "Values," I continued, "cannot be bought. They are built quietly, day by day, often invisible to those who expect wealth to be the measure of life." The words hung in the air. A silence followed. For the first time, Margaret's smile faltered. A quiet power emerges. I realized then that my act of humility had given me an unseen power, the power to reveal truth. Some members of the family, like Sophia's younger sister, whispered to each other in admiration. Others, who had expected me to appear foolish or uneducated, now studied me with newfound respect. It wasn't money or status that impressed them. It was self-respect, composure, and quiet wisdom. I let them ponder it. I didn't press my advantage. There was no need. The conversation takes a turn. David, who had been quiet for most of the evening, spoke at last. "Mom," he said softly, "you've always had this strength. I didn't even realize how much until now." Sophia nodded. "I see it too. It's not what's in your bank account. It's everything else. Your calm, your patience, your ability to handle people." I smiled. "Thank you, both of you. But this isn't about me. It's about how we treat others and how appearances can deceive. Sometimes what looks like naivety is simply wisdom in disguise." The twist. Margaret finally leaned forward, her tone slightly softened. "You know, I underestimated you, but it's clear now that my assumptions were wrong. You may be simple in appearance, but your mind, your perspective, it's sharper than most." I nodded. "And sometimes the way people treat you tells more about them than it does about you." Her gaze met mine for a moment. Respect, not just polite acknowledgement, was there. The evening had subtly shifted, and everyone felt it. A lesson in appearances. By the time the evening ended, I had done nothing remarkable, yet everything had changed. I had acted poor and naive, and it turned out that in doing so, I revealed character, not wealth. I tested intentions without confrontation. I showed that respect and wisdom are measured not by money, but by presence, patience, and integrity. David walked me to the door. Sophia gave me a warm hug. Even Margaret's farewell smile was quieter, softer, but real. I left their house knowing one thing for sure. Humility has a power of its own, sometimes stronger than opulence or pride. The next day, I reflected quietly on the previous evening. The meeting had gone better than expected, yet I sensed that the story wasn't over. I had acted humble, poor, and naive. I had watched their reactions carefully, but there was one moment I had not anticipated, the subtle way their curiosity had shifted toward real respect, and that shift would soon lead to a revelation that changed everything. A surprise visit. 2 weeks later, a small envelope arrived at my doorstep. The handwriting was familiar. Margaret's, Sophia's mother. I opened it carefully. Inside was an invitation. Please join us for tea. We would like to talk with you, not as a guest, but as part of our family. I paused. My heart lifted with curiosity. What could they have discovered? Was it admiration, caution, or something more complicated? When I arrived at their house that afternoon, the family greeted me warmly. Sophia hugged me tightly. David smiled, proud and calm. Margaret's expression was softer than before, a mixture of nervousness and sincerity. The conversation begins. Tea was poured. I noticed the way Margaret watched me, as if weighing my every gesture. Then she spoke. "You know, I've been thinking," she began carefully. "We judged too quickly. You appeared modest, naive even, but it turns out we were wrong." I sipped my tea, waiting. "You see, we value wealth and appearances, but meeting you made me realize something important. Character is revealed in subtle ways. Your patience, your calmness, your honesty. It's rare, and it commands respect without demanding it." I smiled faintly. "So all that acting," she said with a knowing look, "wasn't really acting?" "Only a little," I admitted. "I let you see the version of me I thought would reveal truth, humility and restraint. But the wisdom, patience, and love, that's all real." The daughter-in-law speaks. Sophia reached across the table and took my hand. "I learned so much from you," she said softly. "Not about money or appearances, about life, priorities, and what it really means to care for family. You taught me something that no wealth could ever teach." Her eyes glistened with tears. "I want to be like that someday." I felt a lump in my throat. "Thank you," I said quietly. "That means more than you realize." A change in dynamics. Margaret leaned back in her chair. For the first time, I saw her vulnerability. "You humbled me," she admitted. "I was proud of our wealth, our status, the way we present ourselves to the world, but meeting you reminded me that humility and grace are far more important than appearances." Even Henry, the quiet father, nodded in agreement. "We were all wrong," he said. "True strength doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it waits quietly, and when it's revealed, it changes everything." The lesson becomes clear. I realized then why I had chosen this approach. I had acted poor and naive, not to deceive, but to reveal truth, to teach them that character is measured in patience and kindness, to show that humility can hold more power than wealth, to remind everyone that appearances are fleeting, but integrity lasts a lifetime. By acting humble, I gave them the gift of seeing beyond themselves, a family united in respect. That day, I left their house feeling lighter than I had in years. I had not only preserved my dignity, but had reshaped their understanding of me, and more importantly, of what it means to respect someone truly. The lesson was simple but profound. Never underestimate quiet strength. Never judge by appearances. True respect is earned not by what you own, but how you live, act, and treat others. The following week, I received another call from Sophia. "Mom," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "we want you to come over again. There's something we need to show you." Curious, I agreed. When I arrived, the house looked just as elegant, but the atmosphere was different. There was a warmth in the air, not the formal stiffness of wealth, but genuine connection. A family meeting.
Sophia's parents, siblings, and even a few cousins gathered in the living room. Margaret smiled softly and gestured for me to sit. "We've been talking," she began, "about last time, about how we judged you too quickly." Henry, her father, nodded. "We realized that we had been focusing too much on appearances, on money, status, and image, but you showed us what truly matters: patience, humility, and integrity." Sophia stepped forward, holding my hand. "I saw it before, but now I understand it fully. You taught me more than I could have learned in a lifetime of books or travels, about respect, love, and quiet strength." The unexpected gift. Then Margaret handed me a small box. "For you," she said, "not because you need it, but because we want to honor your wisdom." I opened the box carefully. Inside was a delicate necklace, simple yet elegant, a symbol of respect and acknowledgement. I realized then that true recognition doesn't come from wealth, but from understanding and gratitude. I smiled, deeply touched. "This isn't necessary," I said softly. "Your respect and kindness are more than enough." Margaret shook her head. "It's necessary. You showed us something we didn't know we were missing. We're grateful." A heartfelt moment. The room felt warmer than any fire or chandelier could provide. Sophia leaned closer. "Mom, thank you for teaching me to see people clearly, to value what truly matters. I want to carry that with me always." David smiled. "Mom, you've always been strong, but tonight everyone sees it." Even the youngest cousin, who had been quiet the entire evening, whispered, "I hope I can be like her someday." I laughed softly, shaking my head. "You all will, as long as you remember humility, kindness, and patience. Those are the real treasures." The last lesson. As I left that evening, I walked slowly to my car, reflecting on what had happened. I had acted humble, naive, and even poor in appearance, not to deceive, but to reveal truth. And it turned out that truth speaks louder than wealth, louder than status, louder than appearances. Sometimes humility has the power to teach more than arrogance ever could. Sometimes quiet patience can command more respect than any display of grandeur. And sometimes a simple act, sitting with a cup of tea, answering questions honestly, treating people with respect, can change hearts forever. Epilogue. A lasting impact. From that day forward, Sophia's family treated me differently, not with false politeness or formality, but with genuine warmth and respect. They understood that character matters more than appearances, love matters more than status, and humility can hold more power than wealth. And as for me, I realized something else, the greatest lesson of all. To live with humility is to teach without words. To act with kindness is to inspire without intention. True respect is not given, it is revealed by your actions. I left their home that night with a quiet smile. I hadn't changed who I was. I hadn't needed to prove anything. And yet, everything had changed.